All right, today I'm going to show you guys how to use a digital drawing app called ibisPaintX. It is a free drawing app that works pretty well, you don't have to pay anything for it. You might have to watch an ad if you want to get access to the fancier brushes, but overall it's a really good app for a free one, and you can do this on a smart device like a phone or a tablet, and it works out pretty nicely. You don't need a stylus. You can just draw with your fingers, so I'm just going to demonstrate with the fingers since I know most of us don't have access to that, but if you do have access to a stylus, it does make it a lot easier. You can also use, like, if you have like an iPad, it makes a bigger screen so it's easier to work with, but I'm just going to try to work with the bare minimum because I know that that's what most of us will have access to. So I'm just going to click on this just to open it up. So once you open it up, the screen's going to look kind of like this. You just have to click on My Gallery. Once you click on My Gallery, if you've already done some stuff, it'll be up here. So I was just kind of playing around with it earlier just to learn it. Down here is what you need to do is you need to click on that plus sign. So this is whenever you're first starting out. So once you click plus, they have a bunch of size options. My favorite one is just to go for either the A4 or the B5 because it's a little bit bigger. But if you want a particular size, you can use one of these. Or you can also customize it and make it your own size if you want to. So I'm just going to go for A5 or A4. All right, so this is what it looks like. So this right here is your drawing screen. So like here's where you can draw and stuff. And then down here is the kind of like tools that you can use. So let me show you an example of some of these things. So I'm just going to use my pencil to point. So this right here, you can click to easily switch between pencil and eraser. So if you need to erase something, you just click down here and then erase it. So if I'm drawing something, then I can just click down here and then it can switch between pencil and eraser pretty quickly and easily. So that makes it very convenient for drawing, okay? This right here where it has like that little tool, if you click on it, you can change the tool that it's being used. So some of these are a little bit more confusing than others. The only ones that we're going to focus on for today is just the brush and the eraser. Feel free to like use some of these other ones because there is, for a free program, it's actually very impressive, especially when you get to like the lasso tool and stuff. All right, so I'm just going to click on brush. All right, now down here where you have this little piece right here, this is where you change the type of brush that you're using. So you can kind of like scroll up and down. I've already watched the ad. You might see a little thing that says like ad. If you click on that, you watch an ad. It's like 30 seconds long, and then you get to have 18 hours of free drawing time. So you can use some of these fancier ones if you want to do that, or if you don't want to watch an ad, you can just use any of these random ones. It's fine. So I'm just going to click on this one because that's the one that I want to be using. All right, so you can customize the brush if you want to, but that's a little bit more advanced, but feel free to play with that if you want. All right, so, come back. This right here is two different settings. The thickness is just how thick you want the pen to be, so you can change that up a little bit. And then there's opacity. If it's at 100%, that means it's going to be super, super solid and super, super dark. If you want that to be like see-through or like more faded, you can lower the opacity and it's going to make it to where you can kind of see through the line and make it more ghostly. So feel free to experiment and play around with that. Just because I'm starting my rough sketch, I'm going to keep my opacity kind of like around 70. You don't have to do that. That's just up to you. All right. So then if you click on these little arrow thingies, it'll just hide that. So now you have your screen available. And this is actually kind of like a little shortcut that this can change your size of your brush as well. And this down here can change the opacity of the brush as well. So you can get easy, quick access to those things. All right, and then right here, if you click on this, this will hide the bar, so you have more screen time or more screen space for drawing. Very helpful if you're drawing on a smaller device like a phone. And then you just press that arrow, and then it brings it back up if you need to get access to your stuff. Another thing that I didn't show you, whenever you click on the brush, if you click on the brush itself, this is another way to get access to this menu. And then lastly is to change the colors. If you click on this little black square, that's going to bring up the color wheel. Oops. So say, I usually like, if I'm sketching on the screen, I like to sketch in red. I don't know why, it's just something I've always done. So, but you can feel free to sketch your thing in a different color if you want to. I would suggest, like, if you are sketching on here, sketch it roughly. And then what you're going to do is you're going to play around with this next thing called layers. But let's go ahead and get something sketched out. I'm just doing a sketch of my dog Teddy, so I'm just going to start with really sketchy lines and just go from there. So here we go. Now, let's say that you make a mistake. Oops. Let's say that you make a mistake and you want to fix it. So say if I drew a line, I'm like, oh, no, I didn't want to do that. Instead of having to erase it, use two fingers at the same time and just tap with two fingers together, and it will undo your stroke. So you can tap however many times you need to in order to go backwards, and it'll erase it. Now, if you're like, oh, no, I went too far back, use three fingers, and then just tap with all three fingers at the same time, and it'll bring back whatever stuff that you made. And then you can kind of go back and forth until you're satisfied with however far that you went, okay? Another thing you can do is you can use two fingers to put on the screen and then separate the fingers like this. That'll zoom in. So if you need to get like detailed areas, like say if you wanted to do a more detailed eye or something, or get a little bit smaller areas, then you can do that. You can also move. If you press 2 fingers and slide, then that can move your thing around so that you can easily get access to other parts of the picture. And you can also rotate just by twisting your fingers. Make sure both fingers are touching the screen at the same time though. So this makes it super easy for kind of like when you're sketching, especially, to be able to move and zoom in on different areas. It's all very intuitive, and the more you work with it, the better you're going to get at it. And just keep practicing. If you don't get it at first, just keep sketching and you'll get better and better. Now, like say if you made a mistake and you accidentally drew it too small, this is where you can use this kind of like lasso tool, where if you select the area that you want to get bigger, and then you can transform. Then you can transform by clicking this little plus arrow sign. So if I click on that, then I can change the like scaling and stuff. So I can just use my fingers to kind of like scale it up. I can also kind of like, if I wanted to rotate a little bit, you can. So there's also different forms. Like you can click on these perspective forms or mesh forms. So like mesh form is like if you need to like move in something, like say if I made these ears too big, I can scoot them in. You can like move these around. It's be careful because sometimes it can get very messed up. But if you make a mistake, you can always just fix it, no problems. That's one thing that's great about digital art, is that it's super easy to fix. So I'm just gonna make this get a little bigger. I'm gonna tilt his head a little bit more just because I think that would look cute. Maybe go off the page there. There we go. So super easy to fix. And then whenever you're ready to finish with the meshing and all that, you just click enter. And then there you go. So, and if you see these little dotted lines, that just means that that is selected. Then you can just click this no select tool, and now you're ready to go back to your brushes. All right, so that's just like the super basics of how to do those things. Now let's start with the little bit more complicated stuff, which is layers. So this is just my rough sketch. Once you're done with your rough sketch, then you can start doing the line art and the coloring and the painting and all that fun stuff. So in order to do that, you're gonna use this button down here. This is your layer button. Right now I have a 1 because I only have 1 layer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on that. And there's a couple different options on here. The main one that you need to see is that plus sign right there. So right now I have, this is just my selection layer, nothing selected. This is my line art layer, which I think you can name these. All right, so to use layers, what you're gonna do is you're gonna click on this plus sign. Once you click on the plus sign, you now have a new layer. So you can barely see it, but there's a sketch layer here, and then I have my new layer on top. This new layer is where I'm going to be doing my line art layer. So then this little eye thing right here, if you don't want to see, notice on the canvas that the sketch line is gone. So if you don't want to delete your layer, but you just want to have it to where you can hide it, clicking on the eyeball symbol is going to hide the layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on this layer, and I'm just going to see this little button down here. This is the opacity button. Just like how you can use the opacity for the pencils and stuff, you can also change the opacity of the whole layer so that it's lighter. So you can see it back here kind of changing. So what I like to do whenever I finish with my sketches, I lower the opacity so I can just barely see it. And then I go to my line art layer. Notice that this one is in blue. The one that is selected in blue is the one that you are on. Very important that you pay attention to that, because if you're drawing on the wrong layer, you'll end up having to redo a lot of stuff. So this is my sketch. So I have lowered the opacity. I'm gonna click on my second layer, which is gonna be my line art layer. And now I can click and go on to here. This is a preference, but I prefer to use really, really thin lines for the line art. If you use something too thick, it's gonna look kind of clunky. So I'm gonna make sure that my pen is very small, and I'm also gonna sketch in brown because I like that more than black, but that's just personal. All right, so this is where zooming in can come very helpful if you're trying to get nice, clean, crispy line art. So I'm just gonna zoom in, and then I'm just going to be, now, especially if you're using your finger, I would zoom in pretty close so you can get more accuracy. Brush pens. Notice that some of these kind of are thicker in the middle and pointier on the edges. Those are my favorite to use for line arting. If you get ones that has like curved ends, they don't really have pressure sensitivity. So I'm gonna be using this one, it's called the Dip Pen Hard, I guess. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to very lightly press with my finger, and then press a little bit harder, and then go back to pressing lightly. Notice that we have a variation. So like if you press really hard, you get a really big shape. If you press really, really lightly, you get a very thin shape. So this creates a really cool dynamic with your pressure, and it works really, really nice. So I want to go make sure I'm on the right layer. Check. All right, cool beans. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and do my line art layer. Remember, tapping with, like, if you make a mistake, tap with 2 fingers. If you accidentally go back too far, tap with 3 fingers. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do my line art layer. I'm going to speed this up. So here you can see I'm just kind of sketching my line art as usual. Very important, try to close your forms. If you're going to have like shapes and stuff, try to close your shapes. That'll make it easier whenever it comes to the coloring part. So here you can see I'm trying to press a little harder and press a little lighter in different areas, especially whenever it comes to that fur texture. And because this is digital art, fixing things is super easy. You just have to do that little double click to undo, and it makes it super fast and super easy to fix things. So don't be afraid of, if you make a mistake, don't feel like you have to commit to it. Definitely change it. That's one of the best things about digital art, is you can change so easily, and that's so handy. So just keep sketching until your heart's content, and make sure that you're really emphasizing those textures if your creature or object has textures. Now, just as with the line art, just like you did with your sketch, you can move things around. Like, I'm noticing that his eyes are a little bit too close together, so I want to kind of space those out. So I'm going to go back and use that lasso tool. And I'm just going to draw around his eye shape like this. And then if I click on that little sign again, then I can relocate and move and resize the eyes however I want to. So I'm just going to scoot them a little bit further away because I feel like they're a little bit too close. Like this. Check. Then I'm going to go ahead and move this other eye, make it a little bit smaller. So if you make a mistake, you don't have to erase it if you don't want to. Oops. Yeah, make sure you click unselect if you have something else selected but you want something new. So I'm just going to select the eye, and I'm just going to relocate it and make it a little bit smaller. Don't make it too derpy though. Alright, so I'm just going to finish these up with just a little bit more texture, and you can make these as realistic and on the nose as you want, or you can make them more cartoony. It's kind of up to you. So here I'm just kind of using the adjusting tool to adjust the whole layer, and I'm just playing around with those kind of like transform tools, like the grid thing and then just the adjusting thing, just to see what all the program can handle, and it can handle quite a bit, which is pretty impressive. So here I decided to change up the mouth a little bit, so I'm just kind of tweaking that. So like I said before, don't be afraid of change. Change can make things look very, very interesting and cool, and feel free to move things around. And if you always want to go back, you can just do the 3-finger tap, and then it'll bring it back to where it was before. And I think I'm starting to get to the point where I like the line art, so I'm just going through and adding just a few more extra textures. And now what I'm doing is I'm cleaning it up, so using the eraser tool to erase any messy lines, and making sure that everything is connected or doesn't have any open gaps. If you have open gaps, the coloring part's going to be a little bit trickier, and also trying to get rid of any loops. If I have any loops, that'll make the coloring part a little harder too. Alright? Okay, now my line art is finished. I have it all cleaned up and good. So now what I can do is I can go back to my layer settings. So I'm just going to click on layers. And now I can hide my sketch layers. So now it's just the line art. So it makes it to where it's a lot easier to do the coloring and stuff without the distraction of the previous one. So whenever I click on my layers, I want to start coloring. So now I'm going to add a layer underneath the line art layer. So I'm going to select the sketch layer, and then I'm going to click the plus sign. So now my next layer is now under the line art layer. So what you can do all the coloring on one layer, or you can do separate colors for different layers. So that's kind of up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do different layers for different colors. So I'm going to start with this layer. I'm just going to do the color of just Teddy. So what you're going to do is you're just going to select your color. So I'm going to color Teddy. He's kind of like a fox palm. So he's got this like kind of yellowy orange color. There we go. I feel like that's close. You can slide these bars around, or you can just slide like I'm doing up here. Alright, so you're just going to click on the bucket tool. And where you click on the bucket tool, now this is very important that you have all of your lines connected. If not, this is not going to work, okay? So we're going to try and see if I got it right. Oh, wonderful. Nice. So I do see this little spot right here where I didn't have the eye connected. So if I zoom in here, I can just use my eraser tool. Oop. Erase. There we go. Eraser tool to kind of clean this up a little bit. Now, if you are using the bucket to fill in, which some people like to do that, some people don't, then you might have to go around and check and see if there's any like white gaps that the bucket tool didn't quite fill in, because there might be some, and then you can just color that in with your marker or pen or whatever it is that you're choosing to use. So now once you have it all colored, then what I would suggest doing, go ahead and create a new layer that is above this one, okay? So once you're finished with this one, go above this one. So I'm going to create a new layer, and then this time I'm going to click on the button that says clipping. See where it says clipping down here with an arrow? All right, anything that is in this layer is only going to be colored in the parts that I have colored here. So it's super handy if you have something with multiple colors. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my brush. I'm going to pick a different brush. I'm going to use an airbrush just airbrush normal here. All right, so what I'm gonna do, because Teddy's not just one color, he's like multiple colors. Ooh, this is cream color, is pretty close. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to check and see the size. It needs to be bigger, much bigger, yes. So I'm just gonna use this. Now, something cool is that it's only gonna color on Teddy. It won't color the background and won't color over his nose or anything. It's just gonna color Teddy, which is super convenient because that's exactly what I needed to do. So I'm just gonna add, a little too much there. Let's go down a little size. Okay, so he has some like paler colors above his eye and his little eyebrow areas. And all I'm doing, and this is another one of those pressure sensitivities, so the harder you push, the brighter it's gonna get. So I'm just using this to kind of add a little bit of shading to him. And you don't have to use the airbrush tool. There's a lot of different tools that you can use. Definitely feel free to experiment. I'm gonna go a little bit lighter, a little bit bigger here, get a little bit more lightness in here. And so just kind of play around with your coloring tools, and then as long as you did the clipping mask, it won't go into the areas that you aren't wanting it to go into. And you can clip other things too. So you can do like just the hair if you're doing a person, and then clip that and do that as well. So definitely feel free to experiment with this clipping tool because it is pretty handy and works out pretty great. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of shading and highlighting in here. So now on this particular part, when it comes to coloring, this one's pretty simple because it's all on just like one layer, like it's just a dog. Now if you have something which is like a person and you're doing like skin color, hair color, and the shirt color and all that stuff, it might be beneficial if you have separate layers for those things. So some people like to work in fewer layers and some like to work in more layers. So here I'm just doing all of my shading and highlighting all on this one layer because it's easy. But if it's too challenging to do different layers that way, definitely feel free to color just the hair and then do the shading and highlights on that, and then do the skin underneath it, and then keep going like that, and then it'll work good in layers. Now, because I want to color the eyes and the mouth and stuff, I want to go below this layer so that I'm not going to accidentally color on top of this fur and stuff. So I'm going to click back on my liner, or my sketch layer. Oops, hide that. All right, I'm going to go back on my sketch layer and create a new layer so that it is below the colored part. I'm just going to click over here, so I go back in that layer. All right, so now I'm just going to color the tongue. Because this layer is beneath the other one, as long as I colored that one ahead of it solid, then I don't have to worry about coloring super neat in the lines because it's only going to color the layer that's underneath the fur. So I don't have to be as neat whenever I'm coloring, which is super handy. So here on the eyes, I'm adding a little bit of a highlight and shadow. So I'm shading the upper part of the eye darker, and then I'm going to add a little bitty highlight in the sparkle of the middle, and that always makes the eyes just look nice, and then kind of shading the whites of the eyes. So and this, once again, it's just all personal preference, depends on how much you want. At this stage, I'm just going through and adding some extra highlights and kind of like going back on the line art layer and erasing parts that were too like thick or thin. And so this is basically all just cleanup, and this is usually the part that takes the longest. Since this is just an example, I didn't put too much effort into cleanup, but you can definitely go back and tweak it and make it as clean and nice and crisp as you want it to look in the end result. Okay, something really quick. The part of the video that I did this on got deleted, but for the background layer, all I did was I created a layer underneath my color layer. So underneath this, or underneath the layer that has like the eyes and the mouth, I created a new layer and I just colored the entire thing teal. And then what I did to get this texture that you see right here, this kind of like weird looking texture, is I just went to this button up here. It's like a little like gallery button. And then I just selected a texture from here. So I think I went to here, and then I just scrolled down until I found that texture that I wanted, which was this one right here. And then whenever you click on it, it's going to import it into your layers. So that's where this one is right here. And I wanted mine colored, so I just did a clipping mask above it, and then I just colored that layer. You can also click down here where it says normal, and then try out these different types of layer modes, which looks really, really cool in order to kind of like tweak it and make it look interesting. But yeah, so continue on with the video. So to move layers, all you're going to do is you're just going to click on the, see the three little lines over here? You can just click on that and hold it, and then just drag it and drop it wherever you need to. Okay, so if you accidentally put it in the wrong spot, like if you accidentally put it and it's way up here, you can just drag it until it's right above the colored layer for your background. Okay, all right. Another thing that I didn't mention, but for line art, if you want to change the color of your line art, you can. So like if I wanted to have above this one, if I wanted to create a new layer above my line art and clip it, very important that you clip it, then go back to your line art, And then you're just going to add colors on top. So I wanted mine to look a little bit softer, so I used some lighter browns. And I pretty much colored the entire line art a lighter brown. And then I wanted there to be a little bit of variation, so I added some slightly darker colors and slightly lighter colors to different parts of the line art, just to make it look more interesting. And once again, this is personal. Like, you do whatever you want to do. You can make this super rainbowy, or you can just keep it plain. Up to you. Alright, so to finalize this, I'm just going to show you all of my layers. So, starting with this first layer, this was my sketch layer, and then followed by the background layer and that texture with its clipping mask so that I could color it. This was like the eyes and mouth. On top of that was the fur that I did the clipping mask and the colors on. This is my kind of highlighting layer where I added little bits of color from the background. This is my line art, and this is, that looks very crazy, but that's the colored layer on top of the line art layer, also clipped. And then this very top one right here, that's my signature. And so I did this in 11 layers. You definitely can use less, you can use more. It's entirely up to you how much you want to go crazy with it. Just make sure that you keep up with the order of your layers. And this is the final result. Whenever you're completely finished and you're done and you're satisfied with your end result, you click on this arrow right here. When you click that arrow, it's going to give you some options. So you can change the settings and stuff, but you can also save it as a PNG. So if you click Save as PNG, then it's going to ask if you want to save it to your photos. And as long as you say okay, then yes. Then if you go to your photos, oh, there's Teddy. I was looking at him as his example. All right, so if I click my photos, so there we go. Now it's saved in my photos, and I can upload this to whatever kind of like site or anything that I want to, or I can just save it for my own sake so that I have it saved as like a background. Okay, so something you can also do that I didn't mention is you can click on new thing, and then if you have like say a sketch that you do on a piece of paper, you can always import the picture like this, and then you can draw on top of this just like normal. So for this, I'm doing kind of a rougher line art because I'm not too concerned about making it look nice and crisp, because I'm going to be doing this one with a painterly style, which is very different from the one I did before. The one I did before was more of a cartoony style, so I had to have a really nice, clean line art. But if you're doing a painterly style, the main difference is that you're going to be working looser, and you're not worried about making it look too clean and crisp, which, I mean, depending on the painterly style, you can, of course. But for my painterly style, I really like making things look kind of more rough, as though I was painting with like watercolor or something, which, by the way, this brush right here, oof, so good. This is the watercolor brush. I think it's like the watercolor like reel brush or something like that, and oh my gosh, I was just blown away by how amazing this is. You'll notice that I'm using that color picker a lot, so where you're holding your finger down to pick up the color in order to pick the different colors that are on there. I use that a lot when I'm doing this, because if you are doing the painterly style, you want to try to get a bunch of different colors that are kind of in those different areas. And here I'm just using a really big brush at first, and then once I have all of my colors kind of laid out and I'm pretty satisfied with the color scheme, then I go back in with a smaller brush to add the details. But because this is more of a painterly style, I'm not worried about making it look super crisp. I'm just kind of going in there with colors, and this can be a very fun style to kind of experiment with, because it's a lot looser than just doing the traditional style, and it makes it to where you have a little bit more freedom when you're adding those colors and shading. And I'm pretty much coloring and shading as though I was using like a normal like paintbrush or a normal like shading pen. So I'm just kind of scribbly sketching. And me as a person that I usually do more traditional art than digital art for the most part, so just being able to draw and make it feel like I'm drawing traditionally is just a really great experience to have with the digital mediums, which is really nice. So what I'm doing here is I'm pretty much done with the overall roughness of it, and now I'm just going back in and I'm adding some shadows and highlights just to try to help make different parts of the face and stuff appear. So here I'm just kind of like smudging and blending out different colors just by overlapping them with a very, very low opacity brush. So at this stage, I'm still using the same watercolor brush. I have just decreased that opacity to like really, really low. That way I can add a bunch of different kind of like shadows and highlights with the same texture as what I've been using, but it's not going to completely cover everything that I've wanted to use. So that's how I get all those different color variations. All right, so I'm liking how this looks. Okay. So here's just an example of how I've done a painting using only 2 layers. So this is actually my preferred way to do digital art. I love doing digital art this way because it feels so much more loose and expressive. The most helpful tool on this one is just clicking and holding, so you can select all those weird colors that you've created and then using colors for that. something that I just discovered that's really cool about this. Okay, so here I'm in my gallery. Here you can see my 2 examples that I've done. If you want to, you can click on your picture. And then, by the way, if you need to keep working on it, just click edit, and then you can keep drawing and stuff on it. But there's a little play button down here. You can actually click on that play button, and it's going to play back your entire video. Which is really cool, because you get to kind of see your whole process, and it's just really fascinating to watch. So you can speed this up and slow it down as well, but very cool stuff, and I absolutely love it. This is such an amazing app, and it's so cool. Alright, so that concludes my tutorial on how to use this free drawing program, the ibisPaintX. And I hope that you guys learned something, and if you ever need any help, or if you want to show me your work, feel free to email me, and I'd be more than happy to help you out or check out and see what you did. Alright, so best of luck, and have fun!